Welcome, everyone, to our June 2021 iteration of Vue DC. Today, you will all have the pleasure of joining us in listening to Ben talking about building a Pokedex with Vue 3 and serverless functions. So we're super excited about that. I personally stand to learn a lot, which is exciting. Let's meet the organizers. Ben, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Ben Hong. I'm a Vue core team, primarily do work on the docs, so you might know my work from there. And I'm a senior developer experience engineer at Netlify. So any Vue, Netlify things, questions, feel free to ask. And I recently got into Obsidian, by the way. So for any avid note takers out there, I will answer Obsidian questions all day long. So looks like Tracy's not here, so I'll just do her. But like Tracy is one of our awesome organizers as well. She couldn't be here tonight, but she's from the Bloomberg Industry Group, and she's an absolute superstar. So passing the buck on to Chris.
Hey guys, I'm Christian Guerreri. I'm from Politico, a team lead, and yeah, just happy to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. And I'm Jack. I work at Compass. I'm a full stack developer, and I'm also very happy to be here. We are Vue DC. As of today, we have 1,039 members. So we're staying above 1,000. So don't tell your friends to leave. Tell them to stay and to join us so we can stay above 1,000. Not that we care about numbers. Who's counting anything? Our first meetup was back in December of 2017. And since then, for almost every single month, pretty much every single month, we've at least attempted to have a meetup. That has included the pandemic, which is exciting. So thank you for those of you who are here and who have continued to join us throughout. And hopefully, whether you're attending at the time that something's broadcast or watching recordings, we're happy to be able to still get together, talk about Vue. We'll continue to do these online mostly the third Wednesday of every month, and we'll try to announce if that's ever a different day. And then eventually, hopefully in the nearish future, for those of you in DC, we'll keep an eye on when in-person events feel reasonable again. For those of you who are joining us from outside of DC, I think going forward indefinitely, forever and ever, just like everything else, will be a lot more remote friendly. So I'm expecting that we'll, even if they're in person, I'd expect that we'd be streaming things.
Yep.
If you need support, we are here. So we'll grab these relevant links and share them in the chat. We have a website. We have a Discord. If you're not in that yet, it's a great place to get troubleshooting help. In particular, if you have any questions, Ben and Chris and I try to help when I can, but some excellent resources in that chat. And it's a little quieter than maybe the overall Vue Discord. If you have questions and you'd like to target them to the DC community, please join us there and we'll share announcements there. And there's a Twitter and a YouTube. Obviously, this is being recorded, and we have a number of recordings from events that were done in person or events that have been done in the pandemic. So join us on all those places. We often have a upcoming events slide. I wasn't aware of anything, but Ben, do you have anything you'd like to highlight for upcoming events for the community?
I do know that in the fall they're going to resume some of the conference schedules. So like Vue Amsterdam is doing their Vue.js Global Online. We'll share more information once those things have been announced. I believe Vue London is even coming back. They're actually debating doing a hybrid event. So in person and remote, basically. So if you're feeling comfortable about that, want more questions, please feel free to reach out. And then I think the only other one to keep in mind is I think Connect Tech is actually going to be happening in October. So that's the one that usually happens in Atlanta, and they usually have a Vue track. And I think they're experimenting with actually going fully in person. So we'll keep you all in the loop as we find out more.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben.
Yep.
On our end, we are always looking for talks, and we want to work with you for any ideas that you have for things you'd like to talk about. So you can use this vuedc.io/speaking. You can email us or just message us on Discord. We're looking for anything that you would like to discuss, whether it's something that you have a ton of experience with and you'd like to do a full talk, or you've already done a talk like that, or it's something where you've got a lot of background and a lot of content to talk about, or if it's something that you're pretty new to and it's just like a project that you tried out or something in Vue 3 that you learned. We are happy to accommodate any level of experience and any length of talk. So reach out to us, and we're happy to work through with you planning out how that would go. As we can all attest, it's great practice and experience to present at local meetups, especially if you'd like to perhaps present at conferences later on, build up a talk, try out a talk. So yeah, highly recommend it. And please let us know if you have any questions at all about that. I'm about to reveal this next thing, but any other announcements or housekeeping things, Ben or Chris?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right, cool. Then it looked like it was about to be time for Ben's talk, but no, it's trivia time. And then it's time for Ben's talk.
I'll take two.
And
hey!
Shelby!
What a comeback!
Yeah, really.
Congrats, Shelby.
Doesn't get better.
that was great.
All right, got us.
Had me on the edge of my seat.
Congratulations, Shelby and Keyboard Nerds and Sky King for your performances. So does that means you got Chris Paul on that one, Chris?
Yeah, I did. I did get it right. That's
Very
right.
Nice.
I gassed. Total gas.
Do you screenshot this, Jack?
Could have been an
yes,
actor.
I
And I
have
would
it.
have
Okay, perfect.
All right.
We'll find some kind of giveaway to give the people who win at some point. We just
we've got records of once we can start doing giveaways, especially. All right. With that, I am going to pass it off to our presenter today to talk to us about Pokedexes and View 3 and serverless functions. Very excited to learn. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, sounds great. All right. So I guess to kick it off, the first question I have to ask everyone. So who here is comfortable with serverless functions? Like you're like, this is easy peasy. Like you're like, okay, so Jack's got the hand up. Raise a hand. Okay, so some people here. Also, I lost my Zoom tools. Where are my Zoom tools? I need to bring them down here. Here we go. And I also forgot I do have a Q&A thing. Okay. And so if I were to ask, like, what does serverless functions mean to people? Like if you were to try to explain it in a one-liner, does anyone feel confident enough in their like explanation of serverless functions? Serverless equals AWS Lambda. Yeah, they've certainly cornered the market on it. And that's from PJ. Anyone else? What does serverless mean to you? Because here's the thing, right? Serverless is such a bad word. It's like, and it confuses so many people because after all, it makes it sound like there are no servers, which absolutely is, it's an inaccurate representation. Because really, right? Serverless is about the fact that you don't have to manage the servers. So in that regard, it is serverless. But really the idea here and the reason why serverless as a concept has become popular is because rather than managing servers, you're going to get to focus on business problems, solving business problems instead. And so I think this is worth like sort of why is it not moving? Here we go. There we go. Okay. And so I think this is the key point to take away when it comes to serverless functions is that back then, whenever you wanted to work with servers, you had to be the one to get the hardware, to provision it, to manage it. And now this has now been abstracted away from us. And we can basically quite cheaply stand up our own servers, do things. And then as a result, we get the advantage of focusing on solving business problems. Because after all, who wants to do like the same thing over and over again? Especially for those of us who might not be as familiar with backend technologies, this can be incredibly intimidating. And so here's the thing though, why are serverless functions? Why do you hear so much about it? And so really, I think the main focus of entry here is that it lowers the barrier of entry to building functionality beyond the browser. A lot of us here, I think, have familiar building front-end technologies, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. But the moment we have to enter in back-end territory, it's usually not quite in our wheelhouse. And usually it requires a whole set of new infrastructure and tooling that's honestly quite intimidating to get into. But serverless functions, as we'll see today, have actually basically built a bridging those two areas together. And so I talked about this a little bit earlier, but it's actually quite inexpensive when compared to owning and managing your own servers. And this is particularly true for those of us early on in development. After all, if you're just prototyping an idea, you want to test something out, the last thing you want to do is invest thousands of dollars just to like get something up and running to see if it'll work. And so serverless has basically lowered the playing field when it comes to this kind of thing, especially because as different companies like AWS, Microsoft Azure, Netlify, as they compete for different audience share, really their goal here is to there's a lot of free tiers. And so it's really it's candy land for developers right now, honestly. And so the other thing about serverless functions as well that we'll see today is that it enables quick deployments and updates that are actually inherently scalable. Because when you buy server time, imagine even if you're buying hardware and you have the budget, you actually need to buy it according to how much your audience is going to show up. And so when it comes to scaling it, if you know, for those who watch Silicon Valley, there's that like episode where they're trying to like, they get a bunch of hits to their servers and they don't have the hardware to support it. And they're like doing all this crazy wiring to try to get it to work. Like, you don't have to worry about that. Like, it automatically scales according to what you need, which is really great for us as developers. And finally, this can't be stressed enough, is really that we can focus on business problems and not on managing servers. So to kind of cover really, I think, serverless functions, I'm going to come up with this kind of analogy, which is that imagine we're on this home planet and we have this home base. And this home base here is your website. This is what we use and what we like display. This is where visitors come to check things out. And so the thing is that oftentimes when you're building things, you need to fetch data, right? Like, unless you're doing like just like a pure static site that's like, you know, local data, usually we're fetching things. And so let's envision that these satellites up here, these are like the APIs. Well, a lot of times what we're doing is what? We're sending in data to the APIs and we're getting it back. So we might be fetching it to like WordPress, for example, to get our blogs, or maybe you're fetching it out to a Shopify API to grab your, you know, e-commerce things, and then you're bringing it back. And so here's the thing though, what happens though when you want to change what is being sent back from the server? And so what I mean by that is that a lot of times, what if you want something on the back end to update to be more friendlier for you to use, right? And so this is particularly true when it comes to REST endpoints, because what's happening here is that whatever you send to the like back end, like those satellites, they're going to send whatever they want to you. And making those changes is basically like not possible. And so I'm sure for those of you who've had experience working with APIs, a lot of times you just end up having to finagle with whatever it is they have decided those responses should be. And this can be frustrating because let's say you have this property here that you would love to add on to it, or like you have a payload that's too large. How do you cut down on that? And currently you can't. And so some of the ways we deal with that in front-end code is we just simply grab the massive payload of JSON data, and then we just sort of like try to sort through it and filter it down. But as we know, when it comes to performance, this is not great, because ultimately we know that we're basically getting a lot of data that we're not going to need, and then we just try to take a little bit from it. What if instead you could have these robots that you could build? And these robots, as you might have guessed, are serverless functions. And what they allow you to do is you can send a request to the serverless function, and they will go out to the satellite to get the data and then fetch it back and then return it to you. And when you're looking at this, you're probably thinking like, that's not terribly different than like, why wouldn't I just hit the API directly? Well, one of the benefits you get out of this is that now all of a sudden you can send a command to the robot, but then once it gets the data back, it can actually transform that data and do something different with it and then give it back to you. And so the reason this is interesting is because now, if you think about this across different domains, you now have the ability as front-end developers to basically start doing some really incredible things as far as building your own serverless functions to grab various data, and then those can return custom packages. And we can even go a step further, right? What if instead we wanted to just have a single serverless function where we send one request, and that single serverless function is responsible for going out to get everything, and then when it gets everything back, is going to go ahead and then send the correct data back to our application. All of a sudden, this is a lot more interesting because now, because these serverless functions are under our control, we're not limited by what the backend developers and what, like, especially third-party services where you basically have no control over the API. You don't have to worry about that anymore. You have like freedom and like the creativity, like it becomes an open field of creativity. So that said, though, I do want to say, though, serverless functions certainly have their limitations. Like any technology, there are trade-offs to decisions. And so I just want to make sure we cover that because I certainly wouldn't want you to walk away thinking, well, serverless functions are the answer to everything. They're certainly not. But, you know, let's talk about what they're not good for. Serverless functions, generally speaking, are not great for long-running processes. And so what I mean by that is like if you're trying to like send off your serverless function to do something long-running, like process an entire list database and wait more than 30 seconds to accomplish some task, this is not exactly what serverless functions are for. Per that sort of metaphor of robots and fetching data, they're supposed to kind of take the intermediary of how you would normally expect to get data when you're working with an application, right? You're not expecting to do it's not supposed to be it's not supposed to replace the satellite itself. It's basically supposed to act as that intermediary. And so the general rule of thumb is that 30 seconds. Like if it's going to take longer than 30 seconds, something you wouldn't if a user wouldn't wait that long to get their data, probably not that's not for serverless functions. There are other things for that. The other thing too is that serverless functions, because they have kind of a single task, they don't have a state. So hence this bullet point regarding it being primarily stateless. And what that means by that, for those who aren't as familiar, is that it's not like it. So when it goes to fetch data and it sends it back, the next time you call it, it's not going to sit there and remember it. It's not going to remember that, oh, I had this thing that last time you called it, and therefore I remember to do this thing. So it doesn't have a built-in memory in that regard. And so this is powerful in a lot of ways, because what it is you get a reliable, fresh slate every single time. But at the same time, if you're trying to use it in a way that you sort of almost using it like a database, that would not be a great way of using serverless functions. And finally, the other thing is that compared to the fact that you have to you're purchasing server time on someone else's servers, there can be some performance implications. So you might hear terminology such as cold start, and those can impact some very specific types of problems when it comes to start times and running things. But for the most part, and for the most of what we're doing, this basically for most web developers, this is not a problem. By the time you run into this, you're probably very deep in the rabbit hole and will be customizing some things on your end. Okay, that said, I think my coworker Jason Lengstorff has this thing about serverless functions, and I really like it, which is this idea that serverless functions give developers superpowers. Because what we previously couldn't be able to do, right? In that metaphor of we have our base and we're trying to get data from the satellite, we did not have the abilities and necessarily permissions to go into the satellite to make changes. But with serverless functions, we as we'll see, as we build today, we're going to be able to do stuff like that. So with that said, does anyone have any questions before we sort of dive into the coding aspect of this part of the talk? Give it a couple minutes while I'm setting up. And also feel free to if you raise your hand, I'll see that, and I'm more than happy to bring you all on to chat. But otherwise, it looks like everyone's good.
Yep, I think you're good.
All right, sounds good. Let me drag this window down here. All right, so the GitHub repo we're going to be working out of, which I'll post in the chat. Let's see, view server. Here we go. View serverless Pokedex. All right, let me drop this in the chat. So all the work we're going to do today, it'll be in here. So don't worry, it's going to be public. Don't need to kind of rush down and copy anything. And yeah, let's kick it off. So what we have here inside of this view serverless Pokedex is we have a standard view CLI, basically boilerplate. The only thing I've added here is view X. So let me go ahead and just open it up. And can everyone actually, is the resolution okay for everyone? Can you all see what's going on?
Yeah, I think you're good.
Okay, excellent. So here we can see this is boilerplate. We're not starting with any magic here. We're just straight up view CLI and we're good to go. And this is using view 3, the view 3. All right, so typically speaking, we want to build a Pokedex. So for those of us who aren't Pokemon nerds out there, so this is in reference to the list of Pokemon that comes out of the Pokedex. And so it's basically this dictionary that allows you to bring in all the different Pokemon and then see what they're about. And so what we're going to use to do that is we're going to use this Pokemon API called Poke API, and I'll drop it in for people. Oh, bigger, please, Reinhardt. All right, you got it. So let me bump this up. Thank you for the request. If you need it to be any bigger, Reinhardt, please let me know. And so what this does is it's a free API that basically allows us to fetch data about Pokemon. And so let's go ahead and open this up inside of our code. Let's open the project up inside of VS Code. So I'm going to bump this over to 2/3, and I'll bump this over into 1/3. And let's go ahead and start by showing how we would do this normally, right? If you were responsible for building a Pokedex app, your first reaction is probably, let's go into our home page. And inside of our script block, which I prefer to keep at the top, so I'm just going to rotate this real quick. Okay, we're going to say that when the component is mounted, we're going to run a fetch on this Poke API. So we're just going to grab the ditto here. So I'm going to grab this. Oh, wait, let me copy. Oh, wait, here we go. Let me copy this. So you want to do, so what I'm doing here is I'm using the native fetch browser library rather than something like Axios, which is probably what more of us are probably using in production in order to do this bit. So here we have a fetch call. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this use the async await syntax to make it a little bit easier to read, sort of follow along. So here the data is going to await what we fetch from the API, and then we're just going to log out the data basically. So let's see what happens with this. So here you'll notice that we get a response here. We have response.body. So I believe what we need to do now is let me go ahead and so this is the response. And I'm going to go ahead and say const data equals response await response.body, I believe is .json. That should do the trick. And then if we save now, and whoops, what did I do? .json is not, oh wait, I believe it's this. JSON.parse. That's what I want to do. Here we go. On the right-hand pane bigger. Yes, absolutely, Reinhardt. Again, appreciate the reminders. All right. So let me refresh this. Why is it not response.body? Give me a sec. Oh, no, not at all. So it's hard because I'm like looking at this large display. Okay, it's readable stream. Yep. And then, oh, is this what I have to do? I have to remember this part real quick. Save, refresh. Okay, great. That's an object. Okay, so what we have here is we have the response. Let me go ahead and let's log out the response again. And so we have the cores, we have the bodies. This is great. And then we just need to, I could have sworn it's just the .json should be correct. I'm wondering why it's not cooperating.
It might be await response.json.
Response.json. Oh, I think you're right.
It's something like that.
There we go. Okay. Much better. Okay, I forgot. You don't access the body directly. Thank you, Jack, for the save here. Okay, so let me go ahead and bump this to the bottom and then drag it up. Okay, so what you're gonna see here now is that we have all of our data. And then typically what would we do, right? We would go ahead and come in here and just basically log it out. But one of the things you might notice is that it's got a lot of stuff in here. Especially if we're just looking, let's say for a list of the original 150 Pokemon, there's a lot of random stuff in here that we don't need. And so, okay, so the question is, how do we work with serverless function and what the heck is the deal with it? So typically you would need to provision a server, you would need to sign up for AWS. But what I'm going to show you here is we're going to use Netlify's free, basically, functions plan to show you how easy it is to work with serverless functions in what we're used to as developers. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and inside of this repo, I'm going to go ahead and initialize a new project. So this is using the Netlify CLI. And what this is doing is basically just allowing me to create and configure a new site within Netlify. So this is using the free account. You can sign it up. You can sign up and generate this. So I'm going to call this the View Serverless Pokedex. And then I'm going to just go ahead and run some of the default stuff as far as building things. And then I'll show you what's happening here. Okay. So a couple of things has changed on our repo. One, you'll see that we have this new netlify.toml. And all it is basically helps us to configure things when it comes to our build for our View app. The other thing too, as well, is that we have this .netlify directory, which contains just basically the Netlify CLI configuration for us to basically make our lives a lot easier. And so with serverless functions, one of the ways I like to sort of think of serverless functions is that you're basically allowed to design your own APIs. And so what we're going to do here is that rather than fetch the data here, right, like directly, we're going to go ahead and you'll notice that inside of our netlify.toml, we're going to store our serverless functions inside of this folder. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder to reflect that directory. So here's Netlify, and here's my functions folder. And then I'm going to create a new file in here called Pokedex.js. Because in a perfect world, right, if we're designing what we want, we'd like to actually hit something called /Pokedex that we have control over. And then that is what will actually return everything that we want. So with that, what I'm going to do now is inside of Pokedex.js, I'm going to do, since we're running our functions on a server, we do learn a little bit of Node.js syntax as far as like exporting modules. So here it uses this, exports.handler equals this. And so what we're doing is we're creating a function that says that like, hey, when you hit the server, do this thing. And what it's going to be is going to be an asynchronous function that is going to basically return like a status code. So this requires a little bit of like learning about like what the API design is. But if we think about it, actually, this is kind of what we're returning here is what we normally expect from like the servers that are hitting us back. So for example, we want to know there's a status code of 200 and we want the body to say, hello, view DC. And so once we have this, what I can do now is using the Netlify CLI, I can do until dev. And what this is going to do is think of it like Vue CLI, in that it allows you to scaffold like a whole web development like server. But what makes it even better is it also scaffolds basically the node server, and it will help you simulate how your serverless functions would run on production. And so to show you what I mean, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and delete this for now. And instead of just, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the await response, and I'm going to await, what was it? I'm going to fetch directly from my Pokedex endpoint that I just created here in functions. And then I'm just going to go ahead and log my response. And what you'll notice here is that, yes, I got to do the same thing that I did earlier. Const data equals response dot await response.json. There we go. And then what did I do? Oh, wait, log data. There we go. Wait, this is literally what I just did, is it not? Await response.json. It's literally what I just did. Yep. And it did not like that. Oh, I know why. I know why. I'm being silly right now. Because, okay, hang on. Okay. Okay, this is right. Okay. This makes sense. Okay, so what you'll see here is that the Netlify CLI has actually created for us an endpoint here at 888 for our local development purposes for the Pokedex. And then we see that here that it's a status code of 200 that what we sent back. And so when I come here, what I want to do is I'm actually going to turn this into a JSON object. This is actually why it's basically not liking it. So if I do stringify and I do the message here, this should fix it. So one, as I saved, you're going to notice that one is hot module reloading. And then once it's done that, here, I can go ahead. Now this should actually work. Data await response.json. And inside of here, if I log out data, and then why is it giving me problems? On async unmounted await response log. Let's go into the network real quick to make sure everything's fine. Okay. So when I refresh, we should see that our Pokedex index is hit here. Oh, there's a 304 as in a not modified. Why is it redirecting like this? Okay, let's restart this real quick.
That should be okay though. What's the response?
That's what I would think too.
What's on the response tab in your API call, the Pokedex call?
The Pokedex call, it should just respond with the body and stringify this message with hello view DC.
Do you want to double check that in the network?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Refresh. Here we have the Pokedex.
Response.
Reroute response.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's HTML.
Yep. Which is weird because typically this is not what I'm expecting.
It says, yeah.
Module. Hang on one sec. Let me check something real quick. Netlify explores. Let's see something. Oh, this is a little odd. Okay. Great. This is a little, oh, hang on. Let me open up VS Code. Let me open up another window real quick. I need to check. I had a up and running example here that, is it this? Sorry, everyone, real quick. Woes of live coding. Sometimes you end up getting the differently than what you
got you got to love the ability to learn like by watching someone troubleshoot. So
yeah.
I mean, you could always hard code the response if you have to. You could pull it.
I could, but it's bothering me a little bit because I should have. It should be how. Okay, let me just make sure.
Like it looks like it works on their site for sure. Yeah.
Let me just make sure real quick that I got the syntax right, just because I'm clearly doing this. All it would take is just like I missed the syntax is right. Exports dot handler async function. Okay, that is correct. And then that's good. Context parent return status code body stringify hello world. That is literally what I have. Okay, great. As long as it's not that, that's the key thing. Okay, so let's look at this again. And this is unfortunate that I'm getting this error right now. Why am I getting this error? This was not a problem before. Okay, so I'm gonna do is, in case it's a life cycle thing, what we're gonna do is we're gonna switch. Nope, that shouldn't change anything though. Regarding the created premise, it's saying the unhandled error during the created function. Okay, I know what I'm gonna do. We're gonna take this real quick and we're gonna switch it over to a methods. It says fetch Pokedex, and this will be an async function. And in here, we'll go ahead and do this stuff. And then now that we have this, I'm gonna go ahead and delete hello, whoops. We're gonna delete hello world, and we're just gonna say, we're gonna have a button here, and we're gonna say when we click it, we're gonna fetch Pokedex. Okay, save. And then what is it not like this time? Replace Pokedex with, oh gosh, please tell me it's not gonna, oh, is it the ESLint bit? This is unfortunate. How do I disable all the ESLint stuff in Vue CLI? Not great. I'm just gonna delete this file. Nope, that's not how that works. Looks like we have plugin ESLint. I'm taking that out. Linting can be great. And then there are times where you're like, what is going on? Okay, 8081, npm run lint fix. Okay, we'll try that in a second if that'll work. 81. Okay, now this is better. Okay, yeah, I think that's fine. I'm not gonna worry about that right now. Netlify dev. Okay. So here we go. It's starting back up. It's still not liking it. All right, we're doing npm run lint fix per PJ suggestion. Lint does not exist. This is okay. Things are breaking. Okay, what we're gonna do, I'm gonna, all right. How am I gonna fix this? Okay, all right, we're going back. Woes of live coding. Oh, there's a Q&A, there's questions. I can ask questions. Pathing be off. Oh, the fetch calls for, oh, I think I know. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Kobe. I totally forgot yarn. Okay, so here, the only thing that's a little odd at this point, Netlify dev. Yeah, it's weird though, because we're using, where's my router? Router index.js. It's using the views. We're using create web history. I might, you know what, I'll just use the web hash history. Maybe that's here. Netlify toml. Let me go ahead and turn this on. Redirect rules. I think there you go. I think that's going to be the thing that ends up. Gosh, home. Oh, I know what it is. It is angry at me because I deleted this import. I really need to when I live code, I need to disable all that lint checking. Oh my gosh. Okay, sorry. Okay, much better now. Okay. So here, when we fetch, okay, at least we're back to the original thing. Let me go ahead and check out the network real quick. We have our, okay, yeah, so it's currently rerouting to the index page. Let me restart the Netlify CLI. Yep. Okay, now we're good. Now we're fetching. Once again, it is not cooperating with me. Okay.
What was that line you re-enabled in the Netlify toml? Like
so basically so that it would well, okay, so this thing is redirecting to index.html, but it's like it should be ignoring the functions directory. Like the function should be pathed differently.
Yeah, I got it.
So that's what's kind of frustrating, but I'm gonna take this out for a second. Man. Okay, well, I'm trying to think, how am I gonna get myself out of this hole? Okay, here we have stuff, redirect rules are updated. Okay, so we have Q&A. Any of the above format would deploy a synchronous, we call upon the endpoint. Oh my gosh, I know what it is. Thank you, Kobe. The rubber ducking helped. Okay, my apologies. I got so caught up in showing you how things. The Pokedex lives in the .netlify directory, like the path, because that's how it separates from everything else. That's what I was messing up. So here it's going to now fetch from here, and then let me go ahead and actually not log this. Let me just log the response. Redirect through, fetch. Oh my gosh, here we go. This is it. And then const data equals await response.json. What do you not like? What is it now? Oh, right, because I'm not using data. Okay, fetch. It's crushing me. Async data. Yep. When everything breaks. Womp. Okay, so in the meantime, while let me go ahead and check out.
Oh,
so I thought it might be the /netlify. When you do this, it actually will basically fetch the path from directly /netlify. So it'll assume that there's like a route in it. So I think what's a little bit, let me open something real quick. Let me open up I had this up and let me see. Trying to think, serverless. Can you put a breakpoint in your nodes? Are you thinking like here? No, wait, are you thinking, hold up, I'm trying to think. Oh, you know what I can do here? Inside of Pokedex.js, let's go ahead and just add a simple log here. Pokedex API called. And so if this even works, yeah, so it's not even being fetched. This is actually oh, wait a second. Oh my God, what if it's because I have another server running? Live debugging is, all right, that might have been it. I think it overwrote itself. 8080, yes. Still not great. Good calls, everyone. Can you put a breakpoint in your nodes? Yeah, so the console log is not even happening. You know what I want to do? I'm going to do this. Let me destroy. I think I'm going to just destroy the repo and recreate it and do even less than before. because I wonder if I accidentally started the boilerplate too far. So let me go ahead and do this. We're gonna take this. We're gonna knock everything out real quick because I want to see I want to view create, and we're just gonna do the create in current directory, yes, and just Babel and ESLint. Thanks everyone for your patience. I assure you this will be worth it once I have it up and running. This was working fine earlier, but as usual, once you hit the magical point, it just, okay, great. So now if we yarn serve, we should see the normal thing come up. And so if I go over to the 80 repo, great. So let me go ahead and initialize run. All right, I got to init all over again. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, there you go. Now everything's set up. So now if I run Netlify dev, we'll see everything working here. All right, this is working. So now let me go ahead and create my new folder real quick for, oh, it did not create the thing though. This is what I was concerned about. NTL, unlink, NTL init, create and configure new site. Yep. Oh, no. All right, we're just gonna call this view 3 Pokedex real quick. Yep, please just go through and do the things. Yes. Okay, we have our CI/CD covered. Okay. So, all right, hopefully now I can get you all somewhere. We have our Netlify folder. We have a Netlify folder with our functions inside of it. And then inside of here, we have, oh gosh, what if I had named it incorrectly? Gosh, what, I'm gonna feel so silly if that's the case. Async here, return status code 200, and then the body is going to be a JSON stringified, because, so for those who don't know, when you're returning stuff from the server, basically you can't like add complex objects. So you basically want strings. So hello UDC, save. And so to make sure that this actually works, we're going to go ahead and during the, again, I'm just going to create a async mounted here. And we're just going to say fetch the .netlify / Pokedex. And then that's response equals await, and then log the response. Okay, so, oh my God, I think it did it. All right, so to show you it worked inside of our, no.
Ben, one thing Kobe
Yes.
mentioned, is there any chances at .netlify / functions / Pokedex, or is it for sure at .netlify / Pokedex?
Oh my gosh. Oh, what if he's probably right? I didn't.
Hey, Kobe! That's 20 points to Kobe.
For the win.
Good job.
Okay, so I was going way too fast. Okay, let's reset here. Right. Yeah, this is good. Okay, sorry everyone. All right, so what we have here is, you'll notice that because again, the path is already here, the / functions, I forgot. I have a different repo where it's set up a little bit differently. This path needs to actually reflect the API that you're defining in here. And the reason why it's the .netlify here, which it's a little bit confusing because you have this .netlify here. This is being served under production under the .netlify repo. So the .netlify path, so that you basically don't have a conflict with any of your page routes. That's the whole point of this. And so here now we'll see that inside of here, so let me show you. So once I change this to here, be like with a new message and save it, it'll go ahead and refresh it. And this time, when we go ahead and refresh the page, you'll see that inside of the network tab here, in Pokedex, it now automatically updates. So it's basically like you have a backend that's running and waiting for you. And so to show you why this is really cool is because, okay, let's go ahead and now we need to actually fetch the Pokedex API. We're getting there. I am confident in this now. The thing to remember about serverless functions is they're running on a node server, right? So things like native fetch APIs and stuff, they don't exist. There's no browser after all. So what we need is we need to install a library for basically the server, like the serverless function to use. So I'm going to add node fetch to the library, basically to our repo. And this is basically the fetch function that you would normally get. And you are basically, we're just installing it and requiring it from Node. So it looks like this. So if you haven't worked in a lot of Node code, you'll notice that it's a little bit different because here you would normally do like import fetch from node fetch. This is a bit of an older syntax that's used primarily on the Node server. So here, once I save, you'll see that what we can do here is we can go ahead and similarly then we can now run a fetch. So if I say Pokedex data or response, we can do a fetch on the Pokedex API here for like Ditto, for example. And this time here, rather than return the JSON, I'm actually just going to return, actually, I forgot, I need the data too. The data here, Pokedex response.json, and I need to await this. We can now return this in the body. And so I'll explain what's going on here in a sec. I'm going to go ahead and refresh. And this time it's a 500. And why is this? Pokedex.response.json is not a function. Womp. All right, let me just let's log Pokedex response real quick. So again, one of the nice things you'll see here as like things like seemingly are breaking is that you are working with backend code in a way that's actually basically the way you're normally working with UI code. You add your console logs and you can see what's going on here. And so what you see here is that it's fetching the Pokedex API Ditto, and then it's actually logging out the response that it's pending. Okay, so let's go ahead and log this out a little bit more so I can check this out one more time, refresh, and we'll see here that, yep, it's a promise that's pending.
Await the fetch.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, that was from the chat. That was from the chat. Thanks,
totally
Theo.
Right. Yes. See, Theo, there we go. This is great. Thank you everyone for your help while we're doing this. And so here, we see when we refresh, you'll see now that, all right, it's reading at 400 because I think I need to actually drop something in there. And then I can just refresh again. We have another 500. Your function must have a string body. So this is the thing I was telling you about, right? Right now, Pokedex response is a giant object. And so what we want to do is we want to stringify it. So we can do JSON.stringify wrap. And now when we refresh, you'll see now that Pokedex actually has a proper response. But what we need to do is actually now we need to actually do the JSON piece of it. Because when we actually look inside of what the response is, look at this. We have an actual like status symbol and all this stuff. And so what we want to do is we want to take the data from this, the await Pokedex response.json. And now if I log out the data here, this should show the difference. So when I refresh, look at this. The data is actually printing inside of our terminal. So again, this is the thing, right? Node server is running on the Node server, which is basically your terminal environment. And then your browser is separate. So this is why you'll see that the debugging can be kind of simultaneous in this regard. And so this is cool. We actually see stuff in this regard. So now if I switch it over and actually drop the data back over here, you'll see that when you refresh and we look at our Pokedex API, we actually have everything in here. And the reason this is really cool is because this now means that when we sync together this with all of our Vue stuff, I can basically have like a reactive data piece here. And we're going to call this Pokemon. And then right now it's just going to be an empty object. Well, now we can say that once we get our response from the JSON, like from this endpoint, we can say, okay, what's the data we're getting? So I'm going to say the Pokemon data. and we await the response.json. And then what I'm going to do is we're just going to assign this .pokemon equals Pokemon data. That's it. And then to show you this is actually printing, we're going to go ahead and delete this hello world piece, and we're going to wipe some of this boilerplate out. And what we're going to see here, if I actually print out the Pokemon, is that, boom, everything is here. All our API response. And so you're thinking like, okay, again, why is this interesting? Why is this cool? Well, we talked about serverless functions being something that's run on a separate process that basically helps, like, by the time it's returned in the way you want. So in the sense of this data, for example, like what if we only wanted the abilities functionality here? For example, we don't want anything else. We just want to find out the abilities of the Pokemon. Well, what we can do is actually, because we're here, we're just, again, it's plain JavaScript at this point, we can actually just return only the parts we care about. So I can construct this by saying that, okay, I want the return response to be an object where I'm going to give the basically only I'm going to only add abilities, and I'm going to add data.abilities. That's all I'm going to bring. And then this is what the return response is going to be. And so what you're going to see here is that when I refresh, what did I do? Nope, that should be right. Did I need to hit something? Oh, I need to wait Pokemon.json. I am struggling today. This is,
yeah, per Kobe, I think there's a typo in abilities there.
Yep. All right, boom. That's it. Okay, so okay. Thank you, Theo and Kobe and everyone. This is, all right. So what we see here is we've actually now customized our API to exactly what we want. And I think this is really what unlocks us actually as developers, is that rather than having to go back and say, modify everything that's coming from the backend, you now have the ability to intercept it and do things with it that actually then return back to your code. And what you're really getting, if you think about it this way, is because, again, for those of us who are used to doing this all on the front end, is that you're now actually offloading the code that you're expecting the browser to do off into the servers so that you can actually increase the performance as well as load times and these sort of things. So I promised us that we we're going to do Pokedex. So this is exactly what we're going to do. So the Pokedex API here, the way it works is there's actually a Pokedex endpoint. So we're not going to, and so here, you'll notice that when I have Pokedex.1, there's going to be 898 items in the Pokedex entry. So here, if I swap this out into API v2, all right, here we go, Pokedex/1. We'll see now that Pokedex response, here we go. And this time I'm not gonna do this. We're not gonna worry about the data. We're just gonna return the data. We're not gonna return anything else. We'll see here that once it's saved and we refresh, that fetch Pokedex response.json. Oh, there it is. See how long that took actually? Like for a second, I thought everything broke. And the reason it's taking so long is because there's so much coming back from the server. And so what we want to do here is when we look inside of this thing, like basically this list, all we want from Pokedex is the list of the 150 items. And so what we can do here is we can go, okay, so I'm going to call this like original Pokedex. And original Pokedex is going to be the, we're going to take the data.pokemon entries. And all we want to do is we're going to take basically the first 150. And so all I want to do is, so we're going to say, normally I would do this. We want to do the first 50 items. So we're going to split let's see. What should we use to do the first 50? Let's see, first 10 elements, right? I believe it's like slice, that's what it is. So we're going to take the slice of 0 to 150 of this original data, and that's what we're going to return. That's all we're going to return is this array. So I'm actually going to put this in an object, and I'm going to say Pokemon here and save. And when we refresh the page, you'll see now that we've actually constructed our own response by modifying the existing ones. You can see here that it's come through and grabbed all 150 Pokemon. So to make this a little bit prettier, we're going to go ahead and use this list that we have now. So I'll just run a ULLI and we'll run over every. I just realized, for example, though, that Pokemon is a redundant key because now it's going to be Pokemon. So it's valid JSON anyways. So what I can do is I actually could just return the array directly. This should be fine because an array is valid JSON. So now if I refresh on this side, you'll see that now we just have an array. And you see like the fact that we can iterate on the API design and control that as front-end developers, I think this is incredibly powerful. And when we couple that with sort of development environment, you can see that we can get this really fast feedback loop when it comes to iteration. So now I can say, you know what, rather than Pokemon, I'm going to say Pokemon list just to make this a little bit easier to read. So for every Pokemon in the Pokemon list, we're going to go ahead and say we're going to have the name. So we know that this is going to be Pokemon.name. And then let's go ahead and just add the entry number that it's in. So this will be parentheses, Pokemon.entry number. And then when we save this element iteration, expect it to have a key, of course. Then I will give it a key of, we're going to say Pokemon. So we're going to do an ES string. We'll say Pokemon, and then we're going to do the entry number because they basically all have unique numbers on it. They can't have the same one. So like this. And when we save Pokemon, I thought it was Pokemon.name. Let me render that real quick. Pokemon species.name. Aha, that's what I missed. Pokemon species. And then dot, I can't type today, dot name. Boom. There we go. We have a list of all 150 Pokemon, and we've done that by taking an API that is open and free, but now we've customized the API response to be basically much more malleable and much more friendly to our front-end development code. Because, I mean, how many of us, when we work with backend code, like the response is incredibly complicated. And so having the ability to come through and then abstract that away for the future team and create responses that are like, can easily be kind of disseminated throughout the front-end application. This here is, this here is some of the power of things. Jack with the hilarious joke here regarding an ad for TypeScript API definitions. Yeah, absolutely. If you're using TypeScript, we would have gotten some better autocomplete. Okay, so I want to take a quick, like, when I say a break, I would love to get people to ask questions about some of this setup because, yeah, anyways, so questions. What do people think about what you've seen so far, minus the Ben apparently can't remember to call the right path and typos bit. This workflow, how does this feel to people? Like, does this feel foreign? Yeah. Let's see. Does anyone want to come on and ask any questions? Or Theo raised a hand. All right. So Theo, I'm going to, let's see. Boom. Allowed to talk. If you want to come on video, feel free to.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Come in. Great.
Great. So way back when I created a Node backend and did something similar, made a call to an API, grabbed it, did something, manipulated the data only, and then had a front end that called the API from the Node backend. Mm-hmm. That's doing exactly the same thing. It's just a slightly different configuration. Is that right?
Yeah, basically that's what it is. It's serverless functions allow us to like scaffold all that boilerplate that we would normally have to deal with, and then it automatically deploys it. Like, so when we push to production, actually I can show you some of that, of how that works, but there's a lot of infrastructure that helps to back us up when it comes to this.
So this would be faster than doing it the way I just said it, and just easier because you don't have to create. Basically, what you've done is this handler is basically a node. You said it's a node server.
Yep, basically.
Okay, so instead of creating that whole infrastructure, you basically put it into one file or a couple files or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And so,
and I imagine it's a lot faster as well.
yeah, so let me show you. So actually, let's talk about this, right? Like, what's one of the added advantages of using infrastructure like the Netlify functions? So here, if we go ahead and let's go ahead and push this up into Netlify. So let me just commit all this stuff. So add, yeah, Pokedex with view CLI scaffold. Okay. So if we push this up, what we're going to get inside of Netlify as a result. So actually, let me use the NTL open so you all can see. So again, this all comes with the like a free account, which is kind of what's honestly so bonkers about this sometimes. Whenever you do a deploy here with Netlify, you'll see that one is going to run through and start up the build, kind of what you expect. So for those of us running like yarn build, and then we get a dist file or dist folder, this is what it's doing. And then it's basically helping us to deploy this onto a URL. So it's going to go ahead and do that. Verify run directory. Here we go. Building for production. And so when you've connected a GitHub repo to Netlify while this is doing it, one of the great things about this is that every time it's basically going to have a webhook on your GitHub repo. And every time you push to like whether it's main, master, your production repo, it'll basically automatically do a new deploy. So here, so everything's working now. So if we go ahead and go to the preview of this, you'll see that we actually have everything working. And the reason this is really powerful is because now what we have is inside of our functions, we actually can get like a running log of when things are run, and we can do debugging. And then coupled with this is that, let's say, for example, we want to do a pull request and we want to see like how our serverless functions run when it's slightly differently. So in this example, right, let's say we want to like, so we're changing our from like 150 to 300. And this is what we're changing. So I'm going to check out a branch, and I'm going to do call it new range. I'm going to push new range up. The infrastructure that ends up happening is what you'll see here is that when we create a pull request, like you would expect on your team. So here I have, whoop, can we open it? Great. Oh wait, I didn't commit, silly me. I need to commit the code, update range, and then push origin new range. Okay, here we go. When we do a pull request, what we end up getting here is that since Netlify is connected to your GitHub repo, you end up getting this whole thing that's about to kick off, where it's going to build an entirely separate like environment for you. And this, I think, is part like, when we talk about abstracting things, right? One of the things we love about Vue CLI and a lot of the modern web dev tools is they've taken away things like configuring hot module reload and dependencies away from us. Like we can focus on just writing code and it just works. And so what we're going to see here inside of like, as we're working with our functions, is we get this entirely separately new build that's building on, so it's already deployed, for example. So what you see here, when I preview this, we have a completely different new URL for people to kind of take a look at. But the other thing too is that now we actually have functions that are deployed in two separate, like you'll see here, this is the main branch, but then we also have what do they call it? I call it range. So, deploy preview number. So hold on, deploys, production, deploy preview, functions, here we go. And so this is like an entirely separate environment. So Theo, if that makes it like, this is kind of, I think the next step of a lot of developer tooling is helping us to kind of stand up individual servers and environments that are completely separate from each other. And so here now we have functions that are like, we have different types of functions that are attached to different sites. And then it's a matter of like, so let's say we decide to merge this, for example. So we're like, okay, this is good. And we compare them. Oh, wait, the pull request already exists. So pull request, we're going to say, all right, we're going to go ahead and merge this. And boom, we've gone ahead and merged. What that'll do is you'll notice that Netlify will basically, it's taking care of it knows that main has been updated. So it's going to update that and basically update production for us. And so that'll go ahead and also like basically generate a whole new environment for our serverless functions. where we've kind of basically scaffolded our own APIs. And then, so here we go, boom, 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 and it's done. Okay. So when I refresh the page, you'll see now that, this is not the production site. This is production site. You'll see that the production site is now actually accurately pulling the right set of data. But here is the power of like the atomic deploy and this kind of new concept of keeping things as like isolated containers here, is that your deploys are all basically like scoped to their own environments. So if you all of a sudden need to do a rollback, in the past, because we had decoupled front ends and back ends, like if the front end had to roll back, you'd have to make sure that the back end rolled back at the same time. And so similarly, if you were to like if you were to manage your own serverless functions on like AWS Lambda, you'd be responsible for making sure that when you pull back like your code from a certain time, you're gonna have to make sure that the AWS stuff is also like matching, for example. Well, for example, with Netlify serverless functions, like you can see here that because everything's isolated, what I can do is if we're like, we actually should be going back to the original one. We don't want, this is a bug. We don't want the 150 to 300. We want the original one we had before. All we have to do is go back into our deploys, basically hit deploys, and Netlify can swap all of that for you. So your front-end code and back-end code in sync will jump backwards in time. And so you'll see now that by simply refreshing the page, we've now actually basically reverted everything, but downtime has been zero, and you have the, like, it gives so much flexibility in this regard. So do you, like, does that help to, was that helpful, Theo?
Yeah, it was. It
cool.
was. Still trying to wrap my head around it, but I think I'm getting it.
Yeah. Don't worry. So yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. I'll answer this next one for PJ, but please feel free, Theo, if you have any questions, feel free to raise hand, and sure. We still have some time before.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so PJ is saying, can I push a node application in Docker to Netlify? So this is where Netlify is a little bit different. It doesn't actually provide you a full backend server that you would like deploy. So typically that's where like things like I think Heroku come in if you want to do like a full-blown node server. And this is one of the reasons why I was saying before, like serverless functions are about creating a bridge between the front-end developers and the back-end developers, because the more we can start to get ourselves to get comfortable in like sort of crossing that chasm and like helping each other out, the better it is to basically help us to iterate on code faster. And so in this regard, again, the fact that like, if you think about it again, like there is some basically like initial boilerplate and things you kind of have to learn about as far as like this sort of like, if you're not used to Node.js, JavaScript, for example, it feels, this takes a little getting used to. But once you get that boilerplate down, it's really, if you think about it, it's no different than writing like a utility JavaScript function that you would write for your Vue app. The only difference now is that you have like a service that can help you basically to unlock its like performance potential. Because now that users don't have to wait for giant sets of data, like you can do what works best for your app. And that's what I think I really enjoy about this concept of serverless functions. But as a result, to PJ's point, this doesn't mean that now you can run like a whole node server. Remember what I said about the limitations of serverless functions being that they're not meant for long running things. So you're not supposed to like spin up a serverless function that's going to sit and like basically like wait for the database to like update its like entire schema and table over the course of 30 minutes. Like that's still a very much a backend thing. But for things as far as managing like query requests, or more importantly, being able to then like, because here's the thing, I'm jumping a little bit, but like you can customize these things, right? All I showed you right now was the ability to get data from things, but we can also post data to things. So to show you a quick example of that, earlier I showed you that Ditto example, right? Here, like for example, you might want to be able to fetch different Pokemon. And so theoretically, you'd want your Vue app to come in here and replace this variable with like the Pokemon that you're passing in. And then that way it'll always hit this endpoint for like the current Pokemon, for example. And that all that stuff is actually possible with serverless functions, which makes it really powerful when it comes to customization and simplifying what typically we would write a ton of code on the front end to like handle, which does have a performance impact as far as what we're shipping to users. Cool. We have a question here from Kobe. Can you define a use case for background Netlify functions? Yeah. So a classic example of this, I'll actually just bring up the docs for this because I think it has like a code snippet. So it's not just me talking here. The background functions here on this example, whoops, here we go. Background functions, TypeScript, oh, just JavaScript. Okay. So when it comes to background functions, all right, here is a great example. So imagine if like you have a form that you want to hit an endpoint, and what you want to do is you want to compile like a PDF, and then you want to hit an endpoint that will then send that email like to like send all that buffer over to like the email. So it's basically like, as you can see here, you're doing things like you're dropping all your JavaScript that you're posting to the endpoint into PDF, and then using that to email that out. This is an example of something that might take longer than a standard web call, because you're basically offloading the request to go do something, and you're not really as concerned with what's going to come back. Because unlike a response where you're fetching data, this one is more about like, please go do this thing for me, right? Please go update this database, or not database. Database is not a great example, but here you can see you're chaining a bunch of stuff together that's going to take a while. And so this is where it lasts longer than a regular function. But one of the things you'll see a lot of people working with serverless functions do is that they start to abstract away functionality. So for example, here, let me show you something we did on the Netlify team, is that inside of our serverless functions folder here, here we go, no, functions, you'll see that we actually are able to abstract away, like, for example, Shopify calls. And so we're able to say that like, hey, we're going to create this function that allows you in the front end to just call Shopify. And then we're going to do all like the environment stuff on the back end. So you don't have to worry about like tokens and that kind of stuff. And you just call it and it'll work. And when we start to like open up those ideas for abstraction and know that we can actually protect ourselves from security loopholes when it comes to this, because a lot of times when we're authenticating using purely front end, we end up kind of in weird places where we're like, what happens if we pass the wrong token, if it's not supposed to be public? And serverless functions give you access to those sort of security protection that you often get from backend code, because those things are not being shared basically across the wire. And you basically gets to hide that. Kobe, let me know if that helps to give you an example for the background functions. But I would say, and this is why I was saying earlier with like serverless functions, for the most part, most of us are using serverless functions without really worrying about a limitation of 30 seconds. Like it's one of those things where I think once you get to that point and you're realizing that something's not working, you'll figure out to reach out for something else. And so Kobe has a follow-up here that says, so a call for a file stack processed image, other than image, would be better served by maybe a background function. Yeah, so that's actually a great example. Like if you're processing images, that can be really expensive and can honestly take a bit of time. And so in that particular case, a serverless function might not be the best example. This is where you probably want to have a proper backend service that does the image optimization, the resizing, and then have those basically be available via API. So, right, serverless functions would not be good for that. Because I think the key thing to take away from this is that serverless functions are not by any means supposed to replace the work that backend developers are doing. If anything, it's to augment it so that in the event, like front-end developers can make those decisions. Because and a lot of times when we're thinking about it, as UI developers, we have different priorities than the backend developers for kind of how things are definitely going to work. And we try certainly our best to synchronize those efforts and to ensure that we move forward together. But let's face it, sometimes when it comes to efforts or resources, there's sometimes a little bit of a disconnect. And it would be nice as web developers to be able to go in and make those changes without worrying that you're going to basically like destroy the entire backend and like, you know, cause a whole outage and stuff. So awesome. So PJ says that AWS Lambda solves that problem by creating signed URLs. Yeah. So one of the things that, you know, for some of us who've heard, like AWS Lambda can be a bit complicated to get started with, right? When you're learning about serverless functions. And the reason I find that like services like Netlify, when they like with like the Netlify CLI, that it can basically, as Theo had mentioned, right? Rather than scaffolding your own node server and everything, that like by simply using the CLI, it does that for you, just like you would expect the Vue CLI to do. And then what it does is it actually will it will automatically create all those AWS containers for you with all the security and stuff. And it manages all that, which I think that's what continues to blow my mind, because I would say like serverless functions for a long time seemed like magic to me. There was just so much, there's like basically a really big learning curve. And again, I apologize for the sort of initial complications we were having earlier on. But when serverless functions boil down to these endpoints that you can hit inside of your code app, I think that ends up, and like you saw the hot module reloading and to be able to log things, like I think that's for me where it sort of was like, aha, this is really cool, because now I can start doing some really interesting things to really scope the kind of work that I want to do that I would theoretically want to back it. Like, it's that superpower feeling, which is pretty great. So that said, let me see. Does anyone have any other questions in the meantime? Because
and there's a couple questions in the Q&A.
Oh, perfect. Yes, let me check that. Shelby has a question. Great. I've used Node Express as a server, and I configured Express to do something similar with API calls to only return the data I needed. What is the fundamental difference between Express and Netlify, and is Express considered serverless? Yeah, so Shelby, this is a great question. So the difference is that Express is like you would have to deploy like your own infrastructure, right? When you do like an Express server. And so this is where like a lot of people would deploy to like Heroku, for example. And what Netlify Functions allows us to do is it basically helps to abstract away all that infrastructure you typically have to do on your own. And so rather than having to deploy to Heroku, deploy your Express server, and then like make sure the cores is working correctly, like all of this is taken care for us just by making sure that we set it up in the correct function. And as long as you don't make my mistake, call the correct path, then you're basically good to go. And so I think it's more about like the developer experience in that. Also, actually, let me also say this: an Express server is something that kind of like is a provision server that's kind of like a node server that's up and running and just like stood up the entire time. The serverless functions will only be called whenever it's needed. So that would also be a difference between the two. And so Express probably couldn't be considered like serverless in that regard, because it's more about like a framework for like Node.js to like basically manage all the API calls. And so in that regard, they're different. Let me know if I can clarify further on that, but I hope that's helped. But I mean, Shelby, actually, to your question, it's actually similar to Theo's in that you could do this on your own. There's nothing stopping you from it. It's just, I think the power of being able to bootstrap your work and get faster to solving business problems is what I really love about this kind of workflow. So let me know if you have any other questions, Shelby. But that was a great question. Theo says, if you want to reuse a serverless function, can you save it to a module and import it? Yeah, you totally can. So this is one of the things that I think the easiest thing to show for Theo. Let me go ahead and open up that explorers function again, folder. So you'll see here that here inside of our functions directory, we have a bunch of utility things. And so what we see here, we're exporting this function called post to Shopify, because honestly, posting to third-party servers, usually like services, usually require a bit of work. Like you need to like learn how they take their request headers, their tokens, and then after that, you need to like then do all the responses, right? So what we did here is we genericized this utility function in serverless, the post to Shopify. And so what we do here, you'll see that when we do the check reward status, this is post to Hasura. Let me do check reward. You'll see here that we actually just require the utility file create. That's fine. So again, same concept. We require the utility file, and then we can actually use it inside of our serverless functions. And this is like when the first time I started doing this, I was like, this is cool. I'm basically building like and designing my own APIs as I see fit, rather than having like, and so that's really powerful, I think, especially because a lot of us, when working on side projects, we might not necessarily have the resources or like the knowledge, because I can tell you, I certainly don't, to like stand up a whole backend infrastructure. But to be able to just use serverless functions as like a stub for that, especially when I don't need full backend functionality yet, this is really cool. So hopefully Theo, that helps to answer that question regarding modularization. But yeah, you can require different utility functions and import them and compose them in ways that make sense. So yeah, if you have any other questions, feel free to clarify there. Awesome. PJ had a comment here. Has the SAM which is cool. Oh, AWS has the same, which is cool. Yeah, exactly. So, and just to reemphasize, like Netlify serverless functions is using AWS Lambda like underneath. It's just you don't have to do it yourself, which I am, as someone who went through the certification process for AWS, I'm grateful to have that level of configuration and management just like abstracted away from me. But oh, I like what Theo said here. Serverless function is like a node light. It really is. It really is. And so, you know, we've talked a bit about like, so let me close this. So, okay. The other thing too to also consider is that a lot of times, if you think about it, we've with the node light concept that Theo put out, which I really like, you kind of end up having like a full stack app in like a single repo. Whereas like typically if you're to stand up a side project and you wanted to like create a backend, you'd have to deal with the cores issues. You'd have to make sure that like the API calls are done correctly. Like this is all encapsulated in one place. And as we saw with the atomic deploys, that is incredibly powerful from a workflow model. Because what this basically means now is that you can deploy as often as you want, and you can roll back instantly with whatever code that's necessary. And I mean, this means that shipping becomes basically like low risk. Like who doesn't mind shipping on a Friday? Because all you need to do, again, is I'm assuming that your backend is stable and just mainly front end stuff you're shipping. Like it's a matter of like, if something goes bad, just like revert it and then you're good. But that said, I'm going to show you then, let me show you, we still have a little bit of time. I want to show you now, we showed like a simple fetch, but I want to show you something that a little bit more interesting. Oh, PJ does have a question. Is there an upload file size limit with Netlify? PJ, are you referring to like uploading images and doing like image transformations? And yeah, so let me know if that's what you're referring to. No, like node code. No, not that. Okay, I think theoretically, yes. I think if I say no, and then someone's going to challenge me on that. Yeah, so there's like an execution limit, X amount of memory. Okay, yeah, I would say for the most part, I wouldn't worry too much about the size of the code if you're getting to that point. Okay, Shelby, thanks so much. Shelby, if you have questions, please feel free to DM me. I apologize for having some of the issues earlier on. I wanted to go a little bit further, but Shelby, I really appreciate you coming by. Okay, so what I want to show now, again, as per like the development environment here, I want to show what happens when we start combining this stuff. Because right now, for example, let me go ahead and check out main. And we're going to go ahead and let's go ahead and start up the NTL dev. Yay! Okay, Shelby, thanks. I appreciate it. Hope to see you around the Internet of Things. So thanks again for stopping by. Okay. So, oh wait, I forgot. This is not pulling the latest. I have to pull in the latest. All right. So how we can combine things now. Check this out. So now that we have the ability to fetch all the Pokedex entries, right? And so I'm an original 150 person. So I'm switching this back so that we can get our original 151. Let's go and refresh that. Great. What's really cool about this now is that what we can do, let's do some view things. Oh no, I accidentally killed VS Code. All right, we're gonna do some view stuff with this now. And this I'm very confident with. Okay, so let's do this. When we click on an entry, we're gonna set the Pokemon, okay? And so I'm gonna create a method inside of here called set Pokemon. And we're gonna take the event item in here. Actually, yes, oh, actually, no, what am I doing? We can pass in Pokemon.Pokemon species.name. Okay. And then this will take a Pokemon, and then I'm going to say current Pokemon is an empty string. And to show you this works, we're going to do here current Pokemon, and then current Pokemon here. Okay, so it's going to be a little bit broken because I didn't fix this properly. Set Pokemon this dot current Pokemon equals Pokemon. All right. So if I refresh that, oh wait, did I start my local server? I did not. What is it not like? Comma. Okay. All right, now we're back in the groove. I'm feeling good now. Okay. All right, so we have the current Pokemon and we click like Ivysaur, Bulbasaur, Venusaur. Great. Now, what if we wanted to fetch individual data about each Pokemon? Well, again, let's think serverless functions. So I'm going to say we're going to have a Pokemon.js endpoint. And so it's exports.handler. That's going to be an async function because basically server functions need to be async. And we're going to return, again, status code 200. And this time we're going to have the body. And I'm going to go ahead and stringify this in advance because this is a thing. So actually, I forgot. Let's just copy most of this over so I don't write all that boilerplate. Because what we want is we want the Pokemon response. Because what we want to do is we're going to take this API now and rather, so actually, let me do this. Actually, I realized. Let me comment this out. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to actually get the Pokemon that we're passing in. This is actually what we want. And so you get two different arguments. You get event and context that are actually optional parameters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and log this out for us. So let me just log out the event because this is the main one I want to show you all in the time that we have left. Because I promise I actually can do this in the time we have. So here, save, fetch is not needed, uncomment, and then there. Okay. So inside of set Pokemon, what I'm actually going to do is we are going to make this an async method because what we're going to do is we're going to fetch from that endpoint. So again, I'm going to copy this real quick. And what I'm going to do is we're going to fetch from the Pokemon endpoint. But this time, what I want to do is actually do the type is going to be a post request. Wait, is it method? Sorry, not type. The method I want is post. And the argument I'm going to pass in is going to be the body is going to be JSON.stringify. You'll see Pokemon test. Okay. To show you this works, we're going to log the response. And all right, this is going to be good. So I'm going to put my terminal. We're going to come in here. I'm going to refresh. And when I click, we'll see something happen. One, we got a response. But two, when we logged out what's going here, you see that because it's a serverless function, it gets all this context. So this is the event object that we're getting inside of Pokemon.js. Where's Pokemon.js? Here's Pokemon.js. All right. So you see here, we get all this information. And in here, you'll notice that one, it knows that the method is post. And more importantly, if we scroll down here to the body, you'll see that our Pokemon test is here. And so this should start giving you some ideas here. So if we want to say the selected Pokemon is event.body, and I'm going to actually do a JSON.parse on this because it's currently a string, as we can see it right here. So if selected that is Pokemon, so I'm going to go ahead and log selected Pokemon. I'm going to put it in an object so that's obvious to us. And this time when we refresh and I click, you'll see now that, look, the selected Pokemon is Pokemon. This is good. Why is this good? Because what we're going to do here is we're going to say, now we know this is a fact. We can come inside of here, inside of our Pokemon response, and rather, let me switch out it for the ditto one. Rather than a hard-coded ditto in this case, we're actually just going to go ahead and drop in our new variable. So this will be selected Pokemon dot Pokemon, because that'll give the name. And then await the data. I need this one to be Pokemon response. And then we're going to return back the data. That's all we're going to do. Although I just realized something did not. Nope, that should be good. Oh, wait, I need the node fetch. Okay, Kobe has a good question here. So for fetch, you need to convert back and forth between JSON, string, and parse. Yes, that is part of like that basically handshake protocol of like you only pass strings, you don't pass complicated things. So this is basically a common pattern. So here now, if I click, okay, that's fine. Something just broke. I just need to know why. Await, select the Pokemon. I think this should be right. Let's just make sure real quick. We're gonna log it. We're gonna log this thing, and we're gonna save, and we're gonna refresh. And then when I click on Bulbasaur, I get an error. It looks like
Ben, I think you have an extra quote around your template literal.
Oh my gosh, are these? Oh my gosh, you're totally right.
All right, cool.
Okay, save, refresh, click. Invalid JSON response body test. Oh, that makes sense. Test does not exist. This is great. Okay, so ready? All right, ready for this? Rather than simply passing in test, we're gonna pass in the Pokemon itself. So actually this current Pokemon is going to even be irrelevant in a second. But, and then what we're going to do is once we get the response, we're going to go ahead and say Pokemon attributes. I'm going to go ahead and then this dot Pokemon attributes equals response. That might break a little bit, but we're going to see real quick. That's the beauty of this kind of being able to just kind of react to things immediately. Oh, object respond. Yep. I was almost right because cons data. Again, I have to JSONify. Like this is the thing. To Kobe's point, you have to go. You kind of have to go back and forth. So I want to make sure the response is done the JSON part. It might be JSON.parse actually, but we'll see real quick. So here, again, it's so cheap to, look at it. Okay, hey, look at this. We have all our abilities. Okay, yup. This is way too big. So look, we've now fetched all the oh man, this is too much. How about, let me data.abilities. Let's not even, I'm just gonna grab data.abilities, save. Okay, Charmeleon, boom, Blaze, Venusaur, boom, this. Squirtle, boom, switch. And this is like, imagine how much work this normally would be to like switch, like to go to the backend to do this. But we could just iterate on this because again, it feels like working on a regular web app. That's what is so cool about serverless functions is that it is doing back-endy things, right? We have it coming here. It's going through and fetching it. It's like JSONifying it. But once you get it back to your front end code, it's great because it's so simple. And then you can start cutting stuff from it. You can modify it. You can do transformations on the back end. I'm so excited we got to this point. So I will, this is just the beginning of what's possible. Okay, so that said, I think we are at time. So for those of us who, again, thanks everyone for debugging along. Clearly, we learned that it's kind of like, you know what I felt like the mistake was earlier? It's a bit like when you're working on, you're trying to fix dev and you're on the production link. Don't ask me how I know. I have done that one too many times. And so I was, of course, like this, everyone knew, right? We were getting index.html and I thought it was like redirects and stuff. And I was literally calling the wrong path. Shame on me. But that's okay. That said, though, if you're wondering, like how can I get more information on serverless functions? Really, like the talk here that we did is sort of a live demo, and what we have here actually, I've broken it down actually into an entirely free video course that is here. So, of course, we'll post this one up. But if you're looking for like a sort of more targeted recap of things, this is a great way for you to jump into how you can get started with serverless functions. With Netlify and Vue 3. And again, like minus the path. One of the things I'm proudest about this course, because when I designed it for people who always thought serverless functions were beyond them. And so being able to record and get all the material down is core essentials to less than 30 minutes. I can't tell you, like, to me, I was very happy to do this, because I think as more of us start to understand and leverage it in our own apps, I think the more we'll see teams really get to unleash like their own potential. PJ, thanks so much for coming. But I think we are not done yet, though. I believe, Jack, we have another round of trivia.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We only have the one.
Oh, we have the one. Okay, never mind.
At some point, our intrepid trivia designers have begun to run out of the ability to create 12 questions every time.
It's all good. Next time I'll tap me in for that kind of help. But does anyone here have any sort of final questions that they have regarding Vue 3 and serverless? And honestly, going forward, I'll try to create more materials. So actually, here's some resources for people as well. So in case you didn't know, I'm basically live streaming twice a week these days. And so basically consider it like free office hours. And where I also make lots of silly mistakes while streaming live. So getting more practice on this. And so what you get here is basically on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I live stream, answer questions. I'm also a huge productivity nerd. So you can also ask questions about workflow and stuff. But again, please feel free to keep in contact. As Jack mentioned, we're active in the Vue DC Discord. So as you have Vue questions, please raise them up. It is always helpful for us, especially on the doc side, to get feedback. And as we're making changes and updates to the APIs within Vue, we'd love to hear your feedback as things go on. So Theo was saying, if you can do service functions, are you a full stack light dev? I like it. I like it. Although, to be honest, I do feel like serverless functions is a great way to give people an entry point into backend. Like, it's one of those, like, once you get used to serverless functions, it's like, do you want to do more? If yes, go take a node course. Go like I think it's awesome that Shelby mentioned that she's doing like Express and all that stuff. Like, I think as long as people get progressively like enhanced towards that, I think that's great. So with that said, Jack, do you have any final thoughts before we close out today's stream?
Just to say thank you. That was very informative. And I feel like other people have said, a great intro into both how this might be useful and beginnings of like why this might be useful, or what cases people might consider this. I think it was excellent. Thank you, Ben.
Awesome. Well, again, really appreciate Theo here with the SFR, the Great Gateway Drug to the backend. It does feel a little bit like that. I will say, since I started using serverless functions, I feel much more empowered to do backendy things. So thanks, Kobe, everyone, for all your questions and observations. It was incredibly helpful. So thanks everyone for coming, and we will see you next month for Vue DC.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Ben.
All right. Thanks.